Yes, it is.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Conchetta Martone.
Hi, everyone.
Yes. Conchetta has a PhD in architectural history. She is a professor at Temple University and at Thomas Jefferson University. She is also a principal in DMAS Designs, which is an architectural and design firm in Chestnut Hill. And she is on the board of trustees of Ebenezer Maxwell Mansion. Her presentation she did a year ago about the aesthetic movement was just highly popular. So I invited her to give a presentation on William Morris. This will be recorded and I will have it posted on our YouTube page by the end of next week. So please welcome Conchetta.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here and thank you again for asking me to present. It's always great fun for me, and so I'm very happy to be here with you, and I hope that you will enjoy the presentation. Okay, Diane, is everyone here? Can I start?
Yes, you can start.
Okay, all right, good. So when Diane asked me to talk about William Morris, I was thrilled, as I have been an admirer of the British designer since I visited the Morris Room at the Victorian Albert Museum in London while I was still in high school. Morris occupies an important place in the history of design. During the second half of the 19th century, he exercised a growing influence on design practices and craft revival. He was instrumental in developing an all-new way of thinking about design. For Morris, beauty and function depended on each other, and function always related to human activity or pleasure, which the design must serve. His impact was significant, his ideas contributing to the shaping of 20th century modernism. Morris' creative output was extraordinary. He designed and manufactured the finest wallpapers and fabrics of the 19th century, founding his own decorating company in 1861, the firm that became the celebrated Morris and Company, mastered half a dozen crafts, and wrote some of the finest poetry of his age. In this presentation, I will discuss Morris's involvement in business, illustrating how Morris's brand became associated with products and services expressive of alternative cultural sensibilities that run countercurrent to Victorian utilitarianism. Taking advantage of a network of existing connections with members of the cultured elite and through unique and progressive marketing strategies directed to the middle classes, Morris assembled a community of supporters, united not by class or wealth, but by a love and appreciation for art. For these customers, Morris's products and services became practical and symbolic expressions of an ideal lifestyle. Like Morris, we live in an era of significant technological advancement that is revolutionizing our way of life. Our lived experience has been reshaped in all new ways that can excite us, but on the other hand, can also make us feel anxious about what is to come and somewhat even nostalgic for the past. Morris found that technological progress had negatively affected Victorian society, cultivating cash values over human values. Most expressive of the spiritual emptiness of the mechanical age was its changing urban landscape, which Morris found particularly disheartening. There. On the screen, you see A.W. Pugin's visual comparison between a medieval community and a 19th century industrial city. Church spires and battlements have disappeared, replaced by factory smokestacks and radio plant prisons. Open fields have been taken over by new senseless construction, with pollution darkening the sky. Pugin explained these changes as direct expressions of the progressive erosion of ethical values culminating in Victorian laissez-faire commercialism. Morris was born in this world, a world where the laws of supply and demand govern. If there was no demand to create fine architecture and beautifully planned cities, it meant that such commodities were insignificant as outside the scope of capitalist utility. Throughout his entire life, Morris was critical of Victorian materialism and of the belief that the pursuit of material gain brought fulfillment. Morris grew up in what he later described as ordinary bourgeois style of comfort, but even as a small boy, he was uncomfortable with the trappings associated with social status. After his father died in 1847, he inherited a substantial fortune and was enrolled at Marlborough College, a school attended by prosperous upper middle class children. Morris was disinterested in the school's academic program and disconnected from his peers, often deserting the classroom for the open nearby countryside, where he enjoyed nature and exploration of ancient ruins. In 1853, he entered Exeter College at Oxford to pursue a clerical career. There too, Morris did not excel as a student, except for history, in particular medieval history, a subject that fascinated him and that he was able to pursue. At Oxford, he found difficult to fit in with the more typical students, as his interests placed him somewhat on the fringe. However, he was eventually able to find like-minded friends who shared with him a passion for medieval history, Arthurian novels, and romantic and contemporary poetry. Morris befriended the future painter Edward Burne-Jones, who also had entered Oxford destined to a career in the church. The two became inseparable, remaining friends for the rest of their lives. Morris always read poetry aloud, and one of Burne-Jones's memory of their first term at Oxford was of Morris reading aloud Tennyson's The Lady of Shalott. While at Oxford, Morris was also exposed to the ideas of social reformers such as Thomas Carlyle and Charles Kingsley, but it was John Ruskin that impacted him the most. His books were, for him, as he recounted later in a letter, a sort of revelation. Ruskin's books and essays stirred Morris deeply at a time in his youth when he was still searching for a way of life. In Ruskin's volumes, Morris found an entirely new understanding of the nature of men's work and what it meant to society. Morris agreed with Ruskin's criticism of mechanized production. When workers were forced to perform repetitive tasks, they were deprived of their creative freedom. Their joy in labor diminished. Ruskin juxtaposed the restrictions imposed on industrial workers with the freedom of expression granted to workers in medieval communities who found in labor joy and fulfillment. Ruskin's proposal that to return beauty to productive labor, workers needed to be allowed creative freedom particularly engaged Morris. It was from Ruskin that Morris gained a new outlook on the role of creative satisfaction in labor. Rethinking his career choices, he redirected his efforts towards architecture, art, and eventually the decorative arts instead of the church. He found in creative work the outlet not only for his energy and skills, but also for the romantic ideals and values that he so cherished. My work is the embodiment of dreams in one form or another, he declared. Morris threw himself into creative work. He apprenticed first with an architect, George Edmund Street, while in his last year at Oxford, and eventually devoted himself to painting, encouraged by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Rossetti was a member of an artistic brotherhood called the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, a group of contemporary painters whose works challenged the established canons of art by insisting on accurate observation and vivid colors while depicting ideal subjects and settings. Their works seem to depict the world of mystic lands and bygone ages. Rossetti was a charismatic figure, a true bohemian. Morris fell completely under his spell. Rossetti convinced Morris, who at the time was also writing poetry quite successfully, that if any man has poetry in him, he should paint. And so Morris did. Morris and Burne-Jones moved into 3 furnished rooms at 17 Red Lion Square, and Morris began to work feverishly, trying to improve his painting technique. The caricature sketch captures the French studio's atmosphere and its decor. Morris ordered a suite of furniture, chairs, table, and settle from a local cabinet maker based on his designs. In the sketch, Burne-Jones examines the painting on the back of the chair that Morris designed. The chair was medieval in style and was painted by Rossetti and Burne-Jones, with scenes also of medieval inspiration. And here's the chair, see it over here, and here it's in the sketch. Morris's first opportunity as a painter came through Rossetti, who recruited him and Burne-Jones to join a team of artists in a large commission in 1857. The decoration of the debating hall at the newly completed Gothic Revival Oxford Union. The decorations were to be executed in tempera, and the subject of the all-decorative scheme was based on Malory's epic fable, The Death of Arthur, with floral decoration to the ceiling. Each artist painted one scene from the legend, but Morris also took charge of the floral design on the ceiling. Unfortunately, the commission proved to be a disaster, with the decoration losing brilliancy quickly. Morris repainted the ceiling in 1875. Despite the technical difficulties, the experience at the Oxford Union was of extreme importance for Morris, who found enormous gratification in completing the work. He experienced a tangible sense of pleasure in engaging in all parts of the commission. He delighted in selecting the subject matter from literary sources and drawn from nature. He relished the process of building up color and forming patterns. He enjoyed the feeling of working collectively, collaborating with artists and friends he respected. Perhaps this experience, more than anything, convinced Morris of the viability of Ruskin's ideas about the importance of creativity for both the well-being of the workers and society at large. Following Ruskin's reasoning, Morris understood that the creative works of a society reflect the values of the culture that created them. Hence, when inferior art was produced, it was an indication of the poverty of life of the people. Furthermore, the poverty or health of the arts also impacted the quality of life. Morris refused to accept the debasement of his time's daily surroundings as the inevitable expression of Victorian culture and sought to reform all that, as he explained in a letter. In 1858, Morris painted a portrait of the pre-Raphaelite muse Jane Burden as La Belle Isotte. He married Jane in 1859. In the painting, Morris depicts Jane dressed in medieval garbs, standing in a richly furnished bedchamber. The painting is remarkable in demonstrating not only Morris' mastery of color and pattern design, most evident in Jane's dress and the carpet and embroidered hangings, but also for demonstrating Morris's emerging interest in the decorative arts, as most of the props in the painting were designed by him for his own living space. Morris became persuaded of the legitimacy and importance of the decorative arts far after reading Ruskin's Two Paths, published in 1859. Ruskin wrote, "Get rid of any idea of decorative art being a degraded or separate kind of art. Its nature and essence is simply it's being fitted for a definite place, and in that place forming part of a great and harmonious whole in companionship with other art." Ruskin also made a case for the artist, the designer, and the craftsman to be seen as one, challenging the separation between intellectual and manual activity typical of industrialized societies, and the invoke differentiation between work for gentlemen and work for artisans. Once again, Ruskin's words inspired Morris to action. Morris began first with experimenting with his own daily surroundings. Calling upon his friends for assistance, he designed and executed every kind of decoration and most kinds of furniture for his own newly built palace of art. Based on the success of this experiment, later he resolved to effect change in the decorative arts on a much larger scale. The Red House was designed in collaboration with Morris's friend and architect Philip Webb. The design for the house was imbued with Webb's own great skills as a designer, his sure understanding of Morris's character, deep knowledge of vernacular tradition, and ripeness of materials, as the scholar summarized. Webb's design captured the spirit of medievalism that Morris loved, but also exploited the functional potential of Gothic architecture and reunited the decorative arts and architecture as A.W. Pugin had first championed in the 1830s. The result was a unique and intimate environment rooted in medieval spirit, a functional home built from traditional materials where its inhabitants and friends could realize their ideal lifestyle. The decoration of the interior spaces began in 1860 and was a thoroughly cooperative effort, a shared pleasure in labor. As the scholar puts it, the house was created by a gathering of friends. Current images of the house's main interior spaces do not do justice to the original decorative scheme, which featured flat patterns and figurative painted decoration and embroidered panels in a polychromatic palette. The design of the drawing room was impressive, for it exploited the architecture to dramatic effect. The digital rendering, which is over here, and you could see sort of the current state, but this is a digital rendering of what the reconstructed interior, the original interior would have looked like. So they reconstructed in the rendering. The digital reconstruction of the interior you see on the screen is based on written firsthand accounts and investigation of the physical fabric of the room. Repeating flat patterns framed a band of figurative wall paintings that would have extended to run along the east wall up to the entrance door that would have been here as well. But perhaps were never completed. The settle shutters were also decorated with figurative paintings. Right? And the theme for the figure narrative was the constancy of love as expressed in the poetry of Dante, Chaucer, and the Arthurian poems. A visitor to the Red House from 1863 recorded the appearance of the drawing room, revealing an eclectic combination. I'm sorry, I skipped the page. Okay, that's fine. Recorded the appearance of the drawing room, revealing an eclectic combination of colors, textiles, and furniture. The observer noted that the room included a dais with a window seat covered in golden velvet, so over here, and a splendid yellow turkey carpet, beautiful rugs here and there, quantity of original tables and chairs, and a white sofa filled with luxuriant cushions. The paneling of the alcove with the dais and the window seat was painted green and yellow ochre, and it was gilded and covered with a flowing organic design. The paneling reached the ceiling that was decorated with painted pattern of yellow circles set within yellow squares on a cream lime wash background. So the alcove that I'm referring to is this over here, and there is a detail of the ceiling over here. So you could see how the palette is quite polychromatic, but there is a narrative theme that runs through all the decorations, including the florals and the wall decoration that were to imitate sort of hangings, embroidered hangings, and the theme was the constancy of love. Another important room in the house was the dining room. Oops. Paneling extended around the room, reaching up to the height of the dresser's oak counter. The paneling was painted a rich dark green, while the walls were a reddish terracotta brown. The room's original ceiling featured a repeating painted pattern in yellow and white, as illustrated in a drawing from 1897. For the room, Webb designed a sturdy table with iron bending, a settle, and a dresser. He also provided designs for the table glass and the copper candlesticks. In the dining room, Morris showcases a series of embroidered hangings, that adorned the walls of the entire room. For Morris, textile hangings were an important part of a decorative scheme. They could transform an interior by evoking the green woods of the leafy month of June, or a summer garden, or a solemn procession of mythical heroes, as he later explained in a lecture. The decoration of the Red House exuded a new sense of beauty, rooted in romantic imagination, and a far cry from the crass, mass-produced surroundings that characterized typical Victorian interiors. The campaign to decorate the Red House became an important lesson for all the friends who participated. Rossetti summarized the effect of the house in a letter to a friend. It is a most noble work in every way, and more of a poem than a house, such as anything else could lead you to conceive, but an admirable place to live in too. Utility and beauty were combined in a work of art that was collectively conceived and executed, tailored to the creative lifestyle its occupants sought, and expressive of values and aspirations rooted in romantic sentimentality rather than in cold expediency. Excited by what had been achieved at the Red House by their creative collaborations, the friends realized that by combining their talents, they could challenge the prevailing fashions of their age by promoting good design through their artistic lead. With this objective in 1861, Morris and his friends started a sort of firm for producing decorative articles, as Morris recalled in a letter. The firm was called Morris Marshall Faulkner and Company, MMF and Company. The founding partners were Morris Peter Paul Marshall, a civic engineer and amateur artist, Charles Faulkner, mathematician and engineer, who became the firm's bookkeeper. Other partners included the architect Philip Webb, the emergent artist Edward Burne-Jones, and the well-known artists Ford Madox Brown and Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Indeed, when writing their prospectus, the partners presented themselves as artists of reputation, with proven skills and men of ideas who shared thoughts, values, and a romantic aesthetic sensibility. Their intentions were made clear in the announcement to reform contemporary attitudes towards the decorative arts by producing work of genuine and beautiful character. Their competitors mocked the firm's idealism and resented the partners/artists for their intrusion in the commercial domain. The firm's ethos drew most of its inspiration from Ruskin's discussion on modern manufacture and design. Ruskin exhorted Victorian businessmen to be socially responsible by forming the market rather than merely supplying it. For Ruskin, manufacturers should abandon the production of inferior products and lead by example, creating standards of good taste in the objects they produce. This intention was exactly MMF and Company's. The firm would be involved in the design, the production, and marketing of its products, bridging the gap between the designer and the producer. But for their products to succeed on the market, the firm needed to build a community of supporters. The firm found a home at 8 Red Lion Square. Offices and showroom were on the first floor, with workshops in the basement and upper floors. As soon as the partners moved into the new headquarters, they began to create examples of the kind of work they might undertake, demonstrating their design's excellence, superb craftsmanship, and all-around professionalism. Their earliest clients were architects working in the Gothic revival mode, who shared the firm's interest in medievalism and were already part of the partners' network. The firm was particularly well positioned for this type of commissions, as Morris, who acted as the point of contact for clients, capitalizing on his Oxford education, had in-depth knowledge of the Bible, contemporary theological issues, church rituals, and medieval architecture. Partners Rossetti, Burne-Jones, and Madox Brown who already had worked in this medium, created stained glass windows for these church commissions that exploited the essential quality of glass, emphasizing its natural transparency, refractive potential, and color. The design's high quality and originality became associated exclusively with the firm's stained glass work. Most of the firm's income throughout the 1860s came from stained glass for ecclesiastical commissions. However, Morris also began a limited production of fabrics and wallpapers, hoping to expand his business to include more domestic commissions. The first wallpaper designs were trellis, daisy, and fruit. Morris had to subcontract production to the firm of Jeffrey and Company, since in-house production proved difficult at this point. But Jeffrey and Company had an established reputation for the highest class of hand-printed wallpaper and could satisfy Morris's high standards. Daisy was an instant success. In 1866, Morris sold the Red House, mostly to finance the firm's expansion, as it was from the very beginning its major investor. In 1865, Morris had already taken a lease on a large house at 26 Queen Square, Bloomsbury, moving his family in the upper floors and relocating the firm's showroom and workshop at the ground level, merging his family and work lives into one. Large sums of money were spent on the showroom and the living quarters, with a decorative effect described by contemporary, original, and though extremely simple, very beautiful. The move to Queen Square gave M.M.F. and Company higher visibility, attracting the attention of wealthy patrons with artistic sensibilities who recommended the firm for prestigious projects. The Green Dining Room at South Kensington Museum was completed in 1867. The design of the Green Dining Room was unlike anything seen before for a public interior. Green wood panels rose from the floor to about half height of the room, surmounted by a single row of decorative figures combined with a variation on a pattern of tree and fruit branches. So right here, this band. A pattern with repeating fruit and tree branches, you see up here as well, covering the wall space above the paneling. The cornice took the form of a frieze with a dog chasing a hare. A stylized sunflower motif appeared on the ceiling. A stained glass window featuring circular patterning at the top and bottom, and an horizontal band of female garland weavers designed by Burne-Jones, right here, illuminated one wall. By the 1870s, the firm was well established within the wealthy circles of the artistic elite. This group recognized the firm's goods and services as expressive of ideals and values that were like those conveyed in other fields of cultural productions, which they also endorsed. As culturally significant products, the goods produced and marketed by the firm became accepted as expressive of good taste within the artistic elite circles. The famous watercolorist Miles Burkitt Foster was one of the firm's first patrons from this group. Private commissions from aristocratic members of artistic circles confirmed M.M.F. and Company's reputation as the only really artistic firm of the kind, while also providing the opportunity to expand the range of fabrics, wallpapers, carpets, and stained glass, which were for the most part produced in the firm's workshops and used in all of the firm's commissions. Yet Morris was not satisfied with the firm's success. The range of the firm's influence was limited and as such incapable to fully eradicate mass production of inferior goods, shoddy or sham, as Morris called product of 19th century industry, which still dominated Victorian daily surroundings. Morris was aware of the urban middle class's increasing demand for various products to decorate, beautify their home. Economic prosperity and population growth prompted an increase in housing stock. With rising salaries, living standards, expectations grew. a respectable middle-class household required expenditure on a widening range of items, including furniture, wall coverings, carpets, and rugs. Mass-produced shoddy, as Morris would say, home goods, were readily available. Middle-class consumers purchased them eagerly to fill their homes with the required trappings of their newly acquired wealth. This was the market Morris intended to conquer. To do so, he had to introduce a all new line of products that he could draw upon when commissioned to decorate a middle-class home. To do this successfully, Morris needed to pay close attention to matters of supply, costs, and prices, while still retaining control over the quality and the means of manufacture. Relentlessly, Morris carried on. In 1875, it reconstituted M.M.F. and Company under his sole ownerships as Morris and Company. He continued to pursue commissions from the elite, providing his clients with exclusive services and handmade artistic products, confirming his leadership position in the decorative arts. An example of Morris and Company's project from this period is One Green Place, the house designed by Philip Webb for the aristocratic George Howard. The dining room's decorative scheme is shown here in situ, as you see here in the black and white pictures, and as assembled for an installation part of an exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. The scheme impressed contemporaries for its vibrant colors and elaborate figurative and patterned painting. The frieze depicted the story of Cupid and Psyche, painted by Burne-Jones in collaboration with Walter Crane. The decorative work was designed by Morris. The success of the commission established Morris and Company as the go-to decorating firm of the fashionable homeowners. Concurrently to these high-profile projects, Morris continued to intensify the production of goods directed to the prosperous middle classes. In May 1875, he wrote a letter to a friend revealing that he was up to the neck in turning out designs for paper, chintzes, and carpets, and trying to get the manufacturers to do them. Between 1875 and 1885, 21 new wallpapers entered production. Jasmine, acanthus, vine, and larkspur were among these. 32 new designs for printed fabrics and 23 for woven fabrics, in addition to designs for machine-made carpets and as well as handmade carpets. With such an expanded range of products, Morris began to subcontract work to outside manufacturers if he believed that they could and were willing to work according to his specifications. Whenever he was not satisfied with the result or could not find the manufacturer that accommodated him, he would resolve to learn in the craft himself. For example, he decided to learn the ancient dyer's craft because he could not find the manufacturer that would accept to dye fabrics using vegetable over synthetic dyes. Morris loathed the effect of synthetic dyes. He was offended by the artificiality of the resulting colors, which appeared unnaturally bright and then faded over time. To his dismay, he found the vegetable dyeing was completely out of commercial use. So he set out to revive this old craft. By mastering this old technique, Morris was able to achieve high quality and durability while also creating a range of products which were distinctive and thus unique in the house goods market. In 1877, he opened a fashionable shop in Oxford Street. In this new showroom, he presented the expanded line of products in varying grades and prices. For example, his offering included handmade Hammersmith carpets that were very expensive, and other types of popular Victorian carpets at a range of more affordable prices. This move placed more and more of his products within reach of middle classes. Customers with more modest incomes could buy wallpapers, fabrics, and carpets in the store and create their own decorative schemes. Surely, shopping in the store must have felt like an experience. All goods were displayed to create environments where customers could observe the various pieces as a cohesive ensemble unified by a common style and imagine the effect in their own houses. The professional and intellectual classes were also beginning to appreciate the Morris look, increasing the demand for products and services. And you see an interior that was designed by Morris and Company for Sanborn, who was a cartoonist that often on the papers criticized Morris and Morris' success and the Morris look, but then it became Morris's client. So also here, a contemporary writer observed that many homeowners of the new fashionable suburb of Bedford Park Estate in West London require Morris and Company services or purchase the goods directly in the store. The St. James Gazette humorously picked on the trend, and you can read the poem here referring to Morris's and its friezes, referring to Rossetti and to sort of the style of decorating that have been popularized with Morris and that was very fashionable now also in this particular neighborhood. Confident in his expanding range of influence, Morris began to manufacture at Merton Abbey in Surrey on a large scale. He set a limited number of apartments, a stained glass studio, a dye house near a river with water suitable for vegetable dyeing, a workshop for cloth printing, textile weaving, carpet weaving, and tapestry making. He created an idyllic work oasis where his employees worked in light, airy, pleasant surroundings and were trained in the old crafts and paid salaries above average. Some contemporaries upheld Merton Abbey as the realization of a Ruskinian dream, with newspapers articles stating that at Merton, the genius of inventiveness and the love of beauty are the ruling principles, not the love of money. Yet Morris knew that if Merton Abbey was to succeed, he needed to increase the demand for his products even farther. During this period, Morris worked hard to reach the swath of the market that was still eluding him. He engaged in advertising campaigns, producing impressive brochures, always emphasizing good decoration involving rather the luxury of taste than the luxury of costliness will be found to be much less expensive than generally supposed. This message was spelled out in all the firm's advertisement. He sought not just to sell his products with this brochure, but to explain how good decorations can improve the quality of everyday life. He always stressed how originality, beautiful design and coloring, hand manufacture, and the use of high natural materials were to be expected of all Morris and Company's products, inspiring trust in potential customers. He offered decorating tips, explaining how to use colors and how to combine patterns and arrange furniture in a harmonious way. Morris also lectured extensively during the 1870s and 80s, providing the middle-class consumers with an opportunity for cultural literacy. His approach was successful, capitalizing on his reputation as an unrivaled authority in the decorative arts. He reached consumers across social strata, providing goods and services at the conjuncture of the fine and decorative arts for the elite customers and offering less exclusive but still culturally loaded products to the middle-class consumers, unifying the two social groups in a single community of taste. When industrial capitalism was shaping the market for home goods by incentivizing customers with low prices, Morris felt it was his responsibility as a designer and a manufacturer to provide his customers with products that enriched their lives. Morris's personal and business brand was intimately associated with this idea by insisting on elevating taste over costliness as a mark of true refinement and providing opportunities for education in the decorative arts. Morris made it possible for many people to pursue cultural practices that would otherwise have been out of their reach. It enabled different types of consumers to share in a similar lifestyle based on aesthetic ideals and values to which the Morris brand gave practical and symbolic expression. In this sense, Morris's enterprise could be considered what today we would call a lifestyle brand. Still, considering Morris's social and cultural impact, his contribution offered much more than a progressive business strategy. Morris's claim that art was fundamental to enriching the human lived experience was an important aspect of his legacy, an aspect that perhaps particularly resonates with us today. As Morris's words from a lecture in 1880 remind us, the beauty, which is what is meant by art, using the word in its widest sense, is no mere accident to human life, which people can take or leave as they choose, but a positive necessity, unless we're content to be less than humans. Thank you.
Conchetta, thank you so much. And this is the second time I had the privilege of seeing this, and I learned more this time than I did the first time. I want to say that before I open the floor, that the mansion has hand painted and stenciled walls, and we also are opening a new art exhibit in September of 2022. It's a modern day mural based on our 19th century African-American heroes from deep rivers, and it will cover the walls of an entire room. So we hope that you'll join us. I don't know if Heather Moktaderi is here, and if she can say anything. She's the curator for that art show. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hands if you have a question. And Conchetta, can you not share the screen so I can see everybody?
Stop sharing?
Yeah, stop sharing. Okay, great. So if you have a question, raise your hand or put your question in chat. Yes, Kathleen. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. There we go.
Yeah, you said that Morris did not like I guess the aniline dyes because they gave, I guess, a very artificial color. Did he ever consider, working with those to get a better product, or he was just tied into the?
It's very interesting because it actually, for a while, he did work. He had to work with synthetic dyes because that's all he could. It could get from manufacturers, and so, but he only chose certain colors because he felt that were more acceptable, at least to his eyes. And so, for example, Morris carpets, for example, have sage green or blue and red. So that kind of color palette was kind of determined by the fact that he could tolerate best those colors. How they looked in the artificial dyes, and also he could retain the color a little bit. One problem with the artificial dyes that over a period of time, as they were exposed to light, they faded away. And so he felt if they started strong and they faded away, eventually they will get to the tone that he would prefer. But at the beginning of his production, he had to use some of the synthetic dyes, but that was a reason for him to move and learn himself how to do it, because he felt that he couldn't produce the quality that he wanted in both colors, and also like in the way eventually they started to dye the text, the actually threads that they were used to weave the carpet. So it became all major production, but it was very important to him because he wanted to offer the best possible quality for everything, for all his products.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Elise has her hand up, and then Margaret, after Elise, then you're next. And Elise, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Okay, I just was so amazed at his determination to buck the system, basically, and to try to really put his viewpoints forward in a commercial way. And when you talked about how he said, well, if nobody will use these new dyes, then I'm going to learn how to do vegetable dyeing. So I just was wondering, someone who's that driven and perfectionistic and such an aesthete, and I say that, you know, being one myself, I'm just wondering what happened to Morris in the end, like in terms of his personal life. Did he live a good personal life? Did he die old? Did he die well? Like, I'm just wondering what happened to somebody who's like that.
Yeah, so it's a good comment. I like this question. It gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about his personality. And there is an all collection of caricature sketches done by Burne Jones, who was, best friend with Morris, that kind of